Blessed is the man who shall not walk in the counsel of the wrong, and shall not stand in the path of sinners, and shall not sit in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the Torah of Yehovah, and he meditates in his Torah day and night. For he shall be as a tree planted by the rivers of water, that yields its fruit in its season, and whose leaf does not wither, and whatever he does prospers. The wrong are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind blows away. Therefore the wrong shall not rise in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For Yehovah knows the way of the righteous, the way of the wrong comes to naught. Father, thank you for today, for bringing us all together, Father. For those that are here that have given indication that they truly have a desire to walk in your ways, Father, may you be glorified in what we say and what we do. And you understand, even though we can't see beyond our situation. So please just minister to those that are hurting today. And help those that are here today, Father, that are going to hear the words of truth. Help us, Father, to realize the value in what we're hearing and the opportunity we have to be partakers of you. Thank you for your truth. Thank you for how it judges us. Thank you for how it convicts us. Lead us to repentance, Father. Have mercy upon us. Please be gentle with us as we desire to walk in your ways. Bless and unite us, Father. Strengthen us. Go before us. Bless JP today. Give him your word, Father, when he opens his mouth to be obedient to you, to teach. Strengthen us as a body again, I pray in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Okay, technical difficulties averted. Torah portions Kiy Taytzay. Okay, you might have seen it written differently. It looks kind of like Kiy Taytzay or something like that, but it's not. You've got a kaf, which is a k sound, a hirik vowel, which is an I, and a yod, which is a y sound. So it's ki at the beginning, then you've got a tav, a t, a seira, an a sadi, a z, and an A here as well, so it's Kiy Taytzay. The aleph is silent. Today we're going to be talking about what parts of the Torah again apply to the Gentiles. We were looking at it a couple of weeks ago, and we kind of very briefly looked at the fact that certain things are commanded that the Gentiles can do that we can't do. They're actually encoded in Torah, and we get another example this week, so we'll be looking at that subject. We'll also look at the idea that Yeshua didn't die on the cross. Okay, this is a common doctrine, that he died on an execution stake. So we'll be seeing whether or not that's valid, where that idea comes from. We'll be looking at the conscience as well, how the conscience operates in respect to Torah, with your knowledge about Torah, what you need to know, or even if you think something is true that's not, that you are held accountable to that. And in the third part, we'll be looking at the conscience again, but we'll be looking at it from a different angle. We'll be looking at being unclean, defiled in flesh, in conscience, in spirit, what you can do when you are defiled, how you become clean, how to keep yourself clean. And then in the third part, primarily, we'll be looking at the Torah laws, but how to apply them to situations broader than the actual specific situation that they litigate for or against. So we start in Deuteronomy 21. Verse 10 says, "When you go out to fight against your enemies, and Yehovah your Elohim has given them into your hand, and you have taken them captive, and have seen among the captives a woman fair of form, and have delighted in her, and taken her for your wife, then you have brought her home to your house, and she has shaved her head, and trimmed her nails, and put aside the raiment of her captivity, and has dwelt in your house, and mourned her father and her mother a chodesh of days, and after that you do go into her, and have married her, and she has been your wife." Okay, so this isn't a forced situation. Okay, it's not talking about rape, which is if you go to somewhere like evilbible.com, they'll say, oh, so this is advocating the rape of captives. It's not at all. It's about taking someone as your wife. And in fact, there's all sorts of protections built into this. If you see someone among the captives and you think, they're nice, I'd like to take them as my wife, then you're given this cooling off period, this chodesh of days, okay, commonly translated as a month of days. Slightly different as we've seen before. But for a month, she's got to mourn in your house. She takes off the raiment of her captivity, which you would have put on when you came in as an invading force. She would have beautified herself. She goes to your house and she mourns for a chodesh of days, but part of her mourning, she trims her nails, okay, so she does the opposite of what the Gentiles would think of beautifying yourself, but she also, interestingly, she shaves her head. And this is interesting. It takes us to the topic of what is acceptable for the Gentiles is not acceptable for the holy, set-apart people of Israel. We saw a couple of weeks ago, do not cut yourselves nor shave the front of your head for the dead. For you are a set-apart people to Yehovah your Elohim. Yehovah has chosen you to be a people for himself, a treasured possession above all the peoples who are on the face of the earth. So this is what it's about. Okay, this person who is one of the Gentiles, it's said she's allowed to shave her head in mourning. When it comes to Israel, though, Israel are not allowed to shave their head to mourn the dead. And it's because they're set-apart people. They're a people that Yehovah has taken from amongst all the peoples. He's separated them from all the peoples, and he's made them special. He's made them a treasured possession in his eyes. Therefore, if you're part of Yisrael, you're not allowed to do this. We saw this example a couple of weeks ago as well. Do not eat whatever dies of itself. Give it to the stranger who is within your gates to eat it, or sell it to a foreigner. Okay, and why was that acceptable? It's acceptable because they are a set-apart people. They've got set-apart special rules that only apply to them and not to the Gentiles. Exodus 22:31 says, and you are a set-apart men to me. You do not eat any meat which is torn to pieces in the field. And we've got an interesting phrase. It says you throw it to the dogs. Now, this in all likelihood means literally throw it to the dogs. But the dogs is a term that's used throughout Scripture for the Gentiles as well. So it's an interesting connection. Exodus 31:13 says, and you speak to the children of Israel, saying, my Sabbaths you are to cherish by all means, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, to know that I, Yehovah, am setting you apart. Okay, so again, it's about them being set apart, to know that they're set apart, a sign between them and Yehovah that they're his treasured possession. So, as to whether or not it's sin for a Gentile to break the Sabbath, it certainly appears from Scripture that it's not. It is a sin for us, though. Ezekiel 20:10-12 says, so I took them out of the land of Mitzrayim and brought them into the wilderness, and I gave them my laws and showed them my judgments, which if a man does, he shall live by them. And I also gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign between them and me, to know that I am Yehovah who sets them apart. So he gave them his laws, he gave them his judgments, his way of seeing things in the world, to set them apart to him. Now, this has nothing to do with salvation. I'm not saying that the Gentiles are going to be saved or anything like that. I'm just saying when it actually comes to their judgment, the judgment by their works, Yehovah has got a different way of seeing things, okay? He's only going to hold them accountable to what they know. Leviticus 11:43-45 is another interesting one. It says, do not make yourselves abominable with any creeping creature that creeps. Do not make yourselves unclean with them, lest you be defiled by them. For I, Yehovah, I am Yehovah your Elohim, and you have set yourselves apart. And you have been set apart, for I am set apart. Do not defile yourselves with any creeping creature that creeps on the earth. For I am Yehovah, who is bringing you out of the land of Mitzrayim to be your Elohim, and you have been set apart, for I am set apart. So they're not to eat of these creatures because they're set apart, to set them apart from the world. Okay, that's the whole reason that Israel are not allowed to eat of these creatures. As to whether or not Yehovah holds it as sin against the Gentiles, though, that's a completely completely different matter. He does actually say that he is grieved by the fact that they do these things. He doesn't like it. He's not like, oh, this is great that these people are doing that. That's why he separated us from those people, and he said, no, you're a treasured possession to me. You're set apart. You don't do the things that the Gentiles do, the things that I'm grieved by. But as to whether or not he will hold it against them when they did not have knowledge of it, completely different matter. Leviticus 21, 4-8 says, a leader does not defile himself among his people to profane himself. So here we've got an example of somebody who is set apart from the set apart people. Someone who is set apart and has extra conditions, extra Torah that applies to this person. Just like we have extra things that apply to us because we're set apart, this person does too. It says they do not make any bald place on their heads. They do not shave the corners of their beard. They do not make a cutting in their flesh. They are set apart to their Elohim. They do not profane the name of their Elohim, for they bring the offerings of Yehovah made by fire, the bread of their Elohim, and have been set apart. So that's the same for everybody as it is for this person. But it also says they do not take a woman who is a whore or a defiled woman, and they do not take a woman put away from her husband, for he is set apart to his Elohim. This is extra. Okay, so this person is a part of Israel, but he's got extra conditions, just as we do to the Gentiles. And you have set him apart, for he brings the bread of your Elohim. He is set apart to you. For I, Yehovah, setting you apart, am set apart. Someone else who's set apart in a different way. In Numbers 6, we hear about the Nazarite. It says, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when a man or woman does separate by making a vow with a Nazarite to be separate to Yehovah, he separates himself from wine and strong drink. He drinks neither vinegar of wine nor vinegar of strong drink. Neither does he drink any grape juice nor eat grapes or raisins. All the days of his separation he does not eat whatever is made of the grapevine from seed to skin. All the days of the vow of his separation a razor does not come upon his head until the days are completed for which he does separate himself to Yehovah. He is set apart. He has let the locks of his head grow long. Okay, so this person grows his hair long as well. He's set apart though. The very fact that Yehovah set him apart from the set apart people makes him even closer to Yehovah. So the closer the people are getting to Yehovah, the more set apart they are, the more holy that they are, the more requirements there are of them. And it's the same for us. Numbers 15, 37-41, and Yehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Israel, and you have said to them to make zitziot on the corners of their garments throughout their generations, and to put a blue cord in the zitzit of the corners. And it has been to you for a zitzit, and you have seen and you've remembered all the commands of Yehovah, and have done them, and not searched after your own heart and your own eyes, after which you went whoring, so that you remember and have done all my commands, and been set apart unto your Elohim. I, Yehovah, your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, to be your Elohim. I am Yehovah, your Elohim. So it's all about making him our God by doing those things, and by choosing to be his people by choosing to do those things as well. So again, these things, it is not sin for a Gentile to not wear tzitzit. When they're stood before Yehovah for the judgment, he's not going to be saying, I noticed that you've never worn tzitzit for your entire life. That's a black mark against you. Not going to be the case. For us, however, because we are aware of this, and because we are aware of his standard in this for Israel to set these people apart from the world, if we want to be set apart from the world, we have to do these things. If we don't do them, it's sin to us. Leviticus 20, 22-26 says, and you have cherished all my laws and all my judgments and done them. And the land where I am bringing you to dwell does not vomit you out. And do not walk in the laws of the nation which I am driving out before you, for they do all these, and therefore I am grieved by them. And in particular, what it's talking about here is them eating unclean food. So Yehovah, or unclean animals, no such thing as unclean food. Yehovah looks down on the Gentiles and he sees them eating all of these abominable things, and he's grieved by them. As to whether or not he's going to hold it as sin against them when he's never told them that they need to do this, completely different matter. But But I say to you, you are going to possess their land, and I myself give it to you to possess it, a land flowing with milk and honey. I am Yahovah your Elohim, who has separated you from the peoples. This is the whole purpose of all of these things. And you have made a distinction between clean beasts and unclean, and between unclean birds and clean. And do not make yourselves abominable by beast or by bird or whatever creeps on the ground, which I have separated from you as unclean. And you shall be set apart for me, for I, Yahovah, am set apart and have separated you from the peoples to be mine. So again, if we want to be his people, if we want him to be our Elohim, if we want to be separate from all of the nonsense that the Gentiles are involved in, we've got his instructions. 1 Corinthians 5, 9-13 says, I wrote to you in my letter not to keep company with those who fornicate. And I certainly did not mean those of the world who fornicate, or with the greedy of gain, or swindlers, or idolaters, since then you would need to go out of the world. So again, Paul here draws a distinction between the Gentiles and Israel. But now I have written to you not to keep company with anyone called a brother if he is one who fornicates, or greedy of gain, or an idolater, or a reviler, or a drunkard, or a swindler, not even to eat with such a one. So the standard that Paul is holding Israel to here, and the standard that we hold Israel to here, is different than to the Gentiles. For what have I to do with judging outsiders? Do you not judge those who are inside? But Elohim judges those who are outside, and put away the wicked one from among you. So Elohim judges them, and he's going to judge them by very different criteria. We could look at them and say, well, they're not doing all these things in the Torah. Elohim doesn't do that, though. We're going to look at how Elohim judges them. Proverbs 24:12 says, if you say, see, we did not know this, would not he who weighs the hearts discern it? He who watches over your life, would he not know it? And shall he not repay man according to his work? So the Gentiles do not know these things. They don't have the scriptures. They don't have those standards there. So when Yahovah weighs their hearts, he's going to see that they didn't know all of these things, and their judgment is going to be very different than it would be for us doing the same things. Deuteronomy 4:15-16 says, therefore diligently guard yourselves, for you saw no form when Yahovah spoke to you at Horeb out of the midst of the fire, lest you should do corruptly and have made for yourselves a carved image in the form of any figure, the likeness of male or female. Unless you lift up your eyes to the heavens and see the sun and the moon and the stars and all the host of the heavens, and you be drawn away into bowing to them and serving them, which Yahovah your Elohim has allotted to all the peoples. Okay, he knows that they're going to worship all of these things. Doesn't mean that it doesn't grieve him, that he thinks it's okay. Okay, he wants them to repent and to turn to him and to be saved. However, those people do all of these things, and we're not to do them. But Yahovah has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace. We've looked at the translation of iron furnace before. Kind of iron is the word for oppressive. Furnace, kind of melting pot. And if we put the word oppressive melting pot in there, it sounds a bit awkward. But often the best way to translate Hebrew is with words in English that sound a bit awkward. But that's what he's taken us out of. He's taken us out of the world. He's taken us out of the oppression that was there. Mitzrayim, Egypt being an idiom for the world. To be his people. To be an inheritance as it is today. We are actually Yahovah's inheritance. Deuteronomy 7:5-6 says, but this is what you do to them. Break down their altars, smash their pillars, cut down their asherim, and burn their carved images with fire. For you are a set-apart people to Yahovah your Elohim. Yahovah your Elohim has chosen you to be a people for himself, a treasured possession above all the peoples on the face of the earth. So when you go in and they've got all of these abominations there, all of these idols, you go in and smash them. This is what Paul has to say about idolatry. A lot of people will say, well, Paul said that we could eat meat sacrificed to idols. And they get verses like this, very, very mixed up. He starts off, his opening gambit should tell us Paul's attitude to idolatry. Therefore, my beloved ones, Flee from idolatry. I speak as to wise men. Judge for yourselves what I say. The cup of blessing which we bless, is it not a sharing in the blood of Messiah? The bread that we break, is it not a sharing in the body of Messiah? Because there is one bread, we who are many are one body, for we all partake of the one bread. Look at Israel after the flesh. Are not those who eat of the offerings sharers in the altar? What then do I say? That an idol is of any value, or that which is offered to idols is of any value? So he's comparing it to this. He's saying, look, they make offerings, but they're not offering it to Elohim. He's saying, I'm certainly not saying that their offerings have any value. No, but what the Gentiles offer, they offer to demons and not to Elohim. And I do not wish you to become sharers with demons. You are not able to drink the cup of the master and the cup of demons. You are not able to partake of the table of the master and of the table of demons. This is all him talking about eating meat sacrificed to idols, to these people who lived in a culture that was full of idolatry, just as we do now, okay? That we're not to pay homage to the idols of the society that's all around us either. Do we provoke the master to jealousy? Are we stronger than he? In verse 24 he says, let no one seek his own, but each one that of the other. So it's interesting now. He's told us about eating meat sacrificed to idols. Now he's going to go into how it pertains to the Gentiles, how a Gentile is guilty before Yehovah, and it's all to do with the conscience. You eat whatever is sold in the meat market, asking no questions because of conscience. So what it would appear is what he was being challenged with here when he was addressing the Corinthians was that when he was there, he was eating meat that was sold commonly in the markets. And the meat that was sold in the markets at that point would have been sacrificed to idols, or parts of it would have been sacrificed to idols. He now goes on to say what we should do, what our attitude should be towards this. Okay? Eat whatever's sold in the markets. Ask no questions about it. Don't go and say, has this been sacrificed to an idol? Because then if it has, your conscience bears witness against you and you shouldn't eat it. For the earth belongs to Yehovah and all that fills it. So he's saying, look, even if it's been sacrificed to an idol, all of it belongs to Yehovah anyway. We don't need to worry about it. The only time we need to worry about it is if we know that it's been sacrificed to an idol, because then we're partaking in it. And if any of the unbelievers invite you and you wish to go, you eat whatever is set before you, asking no question on account of the conscience. And if anyone says to you, this was offered to idols, do not eat it, because of the one pointing out to you, and on account of the conscience. For the earth belongs to Yehovah and all that fills it. Now he's going to tell us something very interesting about this person's conscience and how we should be with people who are not in the belief, who are not in the faith. He says, now I say conscience, not your own. Okay, obviously we shouldn't eat of it because then our conscience will be defiled. He says, but that of the other. For why is my freedom judged by another's conscience? But if I partake with thanks, why am I evil spoken of for what I give thanks? Therefore, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the esteem of Elohim. Cause no stumbling, either to the Yehudim or to the Greeks or to the assembly of Elohim, as I also please all men in all matters, not seeking my own advantage, but that of the many, that they might be saved. So what he's saying is, okay, when you're given an opportunity and somebody says, this has been offered to idols, you don't partake of it. Not just because it's against the Torah, but on the sake of their conscience. Because what you're actually doing is you're teaching them what is right and what is wrong before Elohim. So we are often given opportunities, the people who are around us, the people whose lives are around us, and they might offer you something. But in that moment, you've got the opportunity to bear witness to them so that they might be saved. Don't do it on account of yourself. Okay, don't sin, but do it on their account, that their conscience might be clean. But this tells us an awful lot about how Yehovah judges people, about how the conscience is important. Proverbs 24:12 again. If they say they did not know this, he who weighs the heart perceives it. He weighs that. He weighs the spirits. He sees where they were coming from. Luke 12:48, and this is talking about his servants. It says, "But he who did not know yet deserved flogging, did what deserved flogging, shall be beaten with few." So if you're his servant, okay, and you don't know a Torah law applies to you, okay, you get a lesser punishment. From this, though, we can see a principle. Everyone to whom much is given, from him much shall be demanded. And to whom much has been entrusted, from him much more shall be asked. So we as Yisrael have the Torah. The Gentiles do not have the Torah. So this principle is directly applicable to the Gentiles as well. Okay, they don't know. Yahovah is going to judge them differently. But if we get the opportunity to witness to them through our actions, we are to take it. Deuteronomy 26:16-19 kind of encapsulates all of this. It says, "Today Yahovah your Elohim is commanding you to do these laws and judgments, and you have cherished and done them with all your heart and with all your soul. You have today caused Yahovah to promise to become your Elohim." It's interesting. "And to walk in his ways and cherish his laws and his commands and his judgments and to obey his voice. And Yahovah has caused you to promise today to become his people, a treasured possession as he has spoken to you, and to cherish all his commands, so as to set you high above all nations which he's made, for a praise, for a name, and for esteem." And as we saw before, for an inheritance for Yahovah. That's why we've been given all of these things, to set us apart from the Gentiles, to be his holy people, for you to be a set apart people to Yahovah your Elohim, as he has spoken. So the Gentile here is allowed to shave her head for mourning. She takes off the raiment of her captivity. She's got to mourn in your house for a chodesh of days, maybe 30 days. Trims her nails. She's no longer beautified. You've had this woman living in your house who's mourning her father and her mother. Perhaps you went into Bastel, you were full of testosterone, you saw a woman, you thought, "I fancy her, I'd like her to be my wife." Take her back to your house. She's mourning, she's moping about in your house for 30 days with her head shaved, her nails cut off, with all of the stuff she put on to beautify herself taken off. Maybe your opinion has changed. After that, you do go into her and have married her, and she has been your wife, if you still want to. And it has been, if you have not delighted in her, then you have let her go at her desire. Again, she's complicit in this. But you do not sell her at all for silver. Okay, you've got no rights of possession over this woman. Do not deal with her tyrannically, since you have humbled her. Okay. Verse 15 says, "When a man has two wives," okay, so we've got another example here of where the Torah permits something that is not ideally how Yahovah would want it. He's given us the ideal. But he said, when a man has two wives, one loved and the other unloved, and they have borne him children, both the loved and the unloved, and the firstborn son is of her who is unloved, then it has been on the day of causing his sons to inherit his possessions, he is not allowed to treat the son of the firstborn of the beloved wife as firstborn in the face of the son of the unloved, who is truly the firstborn. Okay, so a man's got two wives. One of them he likes less than the other one. She bears the firstborn to him. He wants to treat the firstborn of the woman that he loves instead as his firstborn child. He's not to do so in the face of the son of the unloved wife, though. He is to acknowledge the son of the unloved wife as the firstborn by giving him a double portion of all that he has. For he is the beginning of his strength, the right of the firstborn is his. And this is interesting because this is a direct rebuke to Yaakov in his dealing with his sons, dealing with his inheritance. Paul tells us that the Torah was added because of transgressions. Okay, the transgressions that the patriarchs did primarily we see in the Torah. When Yaakov brought his sons before him to give them their inheritance, he uses this phrase. He says to Reuven, to Reuben, he says, you are the beginning of my strength. Okay, he was the firstborn, but he was the firstborn of Leah, okay, the unloved wife. Joseph was the firstborn of Rachel or Rachel, okay, the loved wife. And what did he do? He gave Joseph the double portion. This says you are not to do that. Okay, you're to give the double portion. You're to acknowledge the son of the unloved wife by giving him the double portion because he's the beginning of your strength. So this is a direct rebuke to the patriarchs, or to Yaakov here. Verse 18 says, when a man has a wayward and rebellious son who is not listening to the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and who when they have disciplined him does not listen to them. I'll put this picture up because this is a guy who was living in his parents' house. He refused to get a job. They had to evict him to get him to move out of the house. Very recent case within the past 6 months. This would be the sort of person that this is talking about. This is not talking about children, as we'll see. Okay, you can have a son without them being a child. It says, then his father and his mother have taken hold of him and brought him out to the elders of his city, to the gate of his city, and have said to the elders of his city, this son of ours is wayward and rebellious. He's not listening to our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. So clearly not a child. Okay, our son is a glutton and a drunkard. He's not listening to us. What we're saying to him, he won't listen to. Then all the men of his city shall stone him to death with stones. Thus you shall purge the evil from your midst. Let all Yisrael hear and fear. And as we saw a couple of weeks ago, okay, the purpose in these punishments wasn't just to stone people to death. Okay, it was so that the other people saw what happened. They heard and they feared. They purged the evil from the midst. Think of how different the society would be today if wayward and rebellious children thought, better not get to being wayward and rebellious and taken in front of the elders of the city, because that will end badly. Okay, this is a measure to stop people from sinning. It's not a measure to just brutally kill people. Verse 22 says, and when a man has committed a sin worthy of death, then he's been put to death, and you have hung him on a tree. Let his body not remain overnight on the tree, and you do certainly bury him the same day. For he who is hanged is accursed of Elohim, so that you do not defile the land which Jehovah your Elohim is giving you as an inheritance. Okay, so we know that this is prophetic of Yeshua. Paul says, Messiah ransomed us from the curse of the Torah, having become a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone who hangs upon a tree. And of course, we know that his body did not remain overnight upon the tree. But this phrasing here, on the tree, causes people to go astray into false doctrines. Okay, people think that Yeshua was not executed on a cross, that Yeshua instead was executed on an execution stake. They say things like the pagans have the crosses in their worship, and the word doesn't even mean cross, the word means stake. Okay, which would be fair enough. You know, people don't do these things on purpose. The word, however, though, okay, we see it here in Thayer's Greek lexicon. The word is stauros. Okay, this is what he was executed on. Every time reference is made to it, it says stauros. An upright stake, especially a pointed one. And this is in the Greek lexicon because in works of people such as Homer, Herodotus, Thucydides, okay, at that time in Greek, that's what the word meant. It meant an execution stake. You'll notice, however, it's also defined as a cross, and that's for a very good reason. In Koine Greek, now we need to recognize that the Greek of the New Testament was not the Greek of Homer. It wasn't the Greek of Herodotus. Languages change. You know, you can look back in time just in English. You can look back 500, 600 years in English, and English words meant completely different things. In Koine Greek, the form of Greek in use between about 300 BC and 300 AD, okay, I've heard it referred to as like street Greek. Okay, it's kind of like rough and ready Greek. It's not the Greek of Homer and Herodotus. The word stauros was used to denote a wooden object on which the Romans executed criminals. So you can see how language develops. Okay, the stauros, the execution stake. Then when the Romans started doing it, it started being used to refer to that as well. The word stauros was used to denote a wooden object on which the Romans executed criminals. When the word is thus employed in the writings of Diodorus Siculus, who was in the 1st century, Plutarch and Lucian, all of whom were non-Christian writers, of whom only Lucian makes clear the shape of the device, the authoritative Greek to English lexicon translates it as cross, because this is what I referred to. This is the wooden object that the Romans executed people on. They executed people on crosses. They didn't execute people on execution stakes. Okay, they would perhaps have someone go to a stake, but they would have them to carry their crossbeam to the stake and then be affixed to it as a cross. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, this form of capital punishment involved binding the victim with outstretched arms, this is not a scriptural source or a Christian source, to a crossbeam, or nailing him firmly to it through the wrists. The crossbeam was then raised against an upright shaft and made fast to it about 3 meters from the ground, and the feet were tightly bound or nailed to the upright shaft. Speaking specifically about the stauros of Jesus, Yeshua, early Christian writers unanimously supposed it to have had a crossbeam. Thus, Justin Martyr said that it prefigured the Jewish Passover lamb. Okay, he's got his doctrine a bit wrong there, not the Jewish Passover lamb, but this is the words that he used. That lamb which was commanded to be wholly roasted was a symbol of the suffering of the stauros which Christ would undergo. For the lamb which is roasted and dressed up in the form of a stauros, for one spit is transfixed right through from the lower parts up to the head, and one across the back, to which are attached the legs of the lamb. Okay, so he uses the word stauros. He says the stauros prefigured this because it was a cross shape. The stauros was a cross in Yeshua's time. Exodus 12:7 shows us how it actually the Passover actually prefigured. Okay, that's just a Jewish tradition, the fact that they had the spit going one way and then another. He just makes reference to it, but it did actually prefigure Yeshua's execution. It says that they were to take some of the blood and put it on the 2 doorposts and the lintel of the houses that they were in. And of course, this prefigured Yeshua's crucifixion. Okay, you've got the blood on the 2 doorposts, okay, and then you've got the blood on the lintel as well. Prefigured his execution, the outstretched hands being prefigured in it. Exodus 6:6. Say therefore to the children of Israel, I am Yahovah, and have brought you out from under the burdens of the Mitzrites, and have delivered you from their enslaving, and have ransomed you with an outstretched arm. With outstretched arms, not on an execution stake where they would nail your hands above, nail through your 2 wrists, and your feet below. That's how someone would be on an execution stake, with a little seat nailed on as well to sit to. John 20:24-25, but Thomas, called the twin, one of the 12, was not with them when Yeshua came. So the other disciples said to him, we've seen the Master. But he said to them, unless I see in his hands the mark of the nails, and put my finger into the imprint of the nails, and put my hand into his side, I shall by no means believe. What did he ask for? Did he ask for the imprint of the nail? He was going to put his hand into the imprint of the nail? No. He asked for the imprint of the nails, because his arms were stretched out in the form that stauros would have been at that time. Genesis 48:14, and Yisrael stretched out his right hand and laid it on Ephraim's head, here, who was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, okay, who was here, consciously directing his hands, for Manasseh was the firstborn. So when he did this, he actually forms the Hebrew letter, the Tav. And the Hebrew letter is the final letter in the alphabet, and it's in a cross shape. In the Paleo-Hebrew, it's a cross shape, and it means the covenant. Okay, it's a sign of the covenant, the Tav. And it's very interesting, this Tav, this cross. Okay, in Ezekiel, when we see that they have the marks put on their foreheads, okay, they have a mark put on their foreheads. The word in Hebrew is Tav, okay, it's the cross. On all of their foreheads, the mark which saved them was a cross on their foreheads. And we're told in Revelation that the 144,000 will all have a mark on their foreheads prefigured by this. Okay, and we're told in Revelation 14 that it is the name of their Elohim. Okay, the name, the character, the reputation of their Elohim. And what better symbol for the character of our Elohim than this sign by which he came and died for us. Okay, that's how his name is on their foreheads. Also, when they were camped, okay, when Israel were camped, couldn't say that they were in these formations to the north, east, south, and west. However, they were camped to the north, east, south, and west in a cross shape. So every time they packed up and went somewhere else, they would camp in a cross shape. If you were looking down on it, you would see the cross was from Yahovah's perspective. So back to the Torah portion. Deuteronomy 22 verse 1 says, "You do not see your brother's ox or his sheep going astray and have hidden yourselves from them. You do certainly return them to your brother without fail." Now this Torah portion, all of the laws in it, and there are quite a lot of kind of seemingly disparate Torah laws that are given to us in this, but they all have one unifying factor. They all show us how to love our neighbor as ourselves, or the overwhelming majority of them do anyway. I went into that the last time that I did this Torah portion. If people want to go on the website and look at the Torah portion archives, it's thewaybiblicalfellowship.com. Okay, and Kiy Taytzay from the past, I go through how it's all about loving your neighbor. But what we're going to look at as we go through these laws is we're going to look kind of at how we apply these laws to situations broader than just the situations given. Okay, so you do not see your brother's ox or his sheep going straying away and have hidden yourselves from them. So when you see something that somebody has lost, okay, you don't hide yourself from it. You don't pretend not to have seen it or act as if you've not seen it. You do certainly return them to your brother without fail. And if your brother is not near you, or if you have not known him, then you've brought it to your own house and it has been with you until your brother seeks it. And then you've returned it to him. So the emphasis of this is to return it to the person. Take it somewhere where the person is going to retrieve it. Okay, we don't live in the little villages that they would have lived in with the elders at the gate who take something into our house. Chances are we're never going to return it. For us, what we could do if we find something, obviously take it to a place where they might go and look for it. So if you find money, obviously the tempting thing is to go, ooh, a gift from Yehovah, that's very nice, I'll have this money. Okay, but just take it to somewhere that's nearby, even if you don't think that it's likely that that person's ever going to go back and look for that money. Take it to somewhere where they can find it again. We're commanded in Torah that we're to do this. Okay, we forget that Yehovah is involved in everything. Okay, so you do with his donkey, so you do with his garments, and so you do with whatever your brother loses, which he has lost and you have found. You are not allowed to hide yourself. Okay, you're not allowed to just take those things. Okay, you're not allowed to just pretend that it's all fine and, you know, they're very unlikely to come back for it and it's okay for you to actually have it. It's a bit of a blessing, in fact. Not what Yehovah wants us to do. Okay, we take it to a place where it could possibly be returned to him. Okay, it might have even been unlikely for them if they took it to their houses that anybody would ever claim it back, but that's what they're to do. Verse 4 says, "You do not see your brother's donkey or his ox fall down on the way and have hidden yourself from them. You do certainly raise them up with them." So you see someone traveling, you see that the animals that they're traveling with are struggling, they've fallen down. Help them up. How do we apply that to our lives? Okay, simple way. You're on the road, you see someone's broken down, go and help them. Okay, you don't hide yourself from them. You don't drive past them and go, "Oh yeah, I'm sure they'll be fine." I've tried to do this a couple of times and the person's been like, "Oh no, it's okay because of this or because of that." I've never actually had to go out of my way to do this. But if you see somebody and they're broken down, the thing that we should do is stop and help them get back on their way. Verse 5, "A woman does not wear that which pertains to a man, nor does a man put on a woman's garment. For whoever does this is an abomination to Yehovah your Elohim." And, you know, I could philosophize and I could talk about how bad it is that society is going down the drain. But as we saw, the Gentiles are kind of in a bit of a different position to us. They grieve Yehovah in what they do, but that should not be our focus. We've got nothing to do with judging outsiders. Okay, we judge us within. I did a teaching a while back, I put it up on the channel, which is, should a man have long hair? And I showed how this verse is actually prohibitive of a man wearing that which pertains to a woman, and that the long hair is given to a woman. Okay, if people want to look at that, it's not so far back in the videos, but we should be taking these things and not really looking and saying how terrible society is. We should be taking them and looking inward and seeing where we're at in regards to these things. When you come upon a bird's nest along the way in any tree or the ground with its young ones or eggs, with the mother sitting on the young or on the eggs, do not take the mother with the young. Let the mother go without fail. Take the young for yourself, so that it might be well with you and that you have prolonged your days. So with all these things, we look at what Yehovah is actually trying to achieve, what his principle of justice is. These are called his judgments. We can see how he would judge a matter. Okay, you come across some kind of thing which is a renewable source, and it provides something. You take what its produce is, but you don't take the actual source of those things. That's what's happening here with the mother. Obviously, if you take the mother can't produce any more young. If you take just the young, the mother can continue to produce. When you build a new house, then you have made a parapet for your roof. You do not bring blood guilt on your house when no one falls from it. So we might say, well, we're very unlikely to be building our own houses. Maybe we will, and if we do, then we build a parapet on it. It's one level of this. But we can see so much more of Yehovah's heart from this. Okay? Take care about the safety of others. Be concerned about those things, okay? You bear blood guilt if even by accident somebody who's on your property, if you've been reckless, has injured themselves. Okay, we can see so much about Yehovah when we meditate on these things as David did. Do not sow your vineyard with different kinds of seed, lest the yield of your seed which you have sown and the fruit of your vineyard be defiled. And we can look at this, see the principle, maybe say GMOs are a bad thing. Okay, we shouldn't be mixing those things up. Or we can look at it and we know what the seed is, we know what the vineyard is prophetically, we know Israel is Yehovah's vineyard. The seed is the word of Elohim. You can look at that and you can say things like, okay, so bringing in these extra biblical texts, it's not good. You're mixing one seed with another and one seed becomes defiled by the other. Or you can say strange doctrines that come into the Torah movement. Okay, you shouldn't be mixing those seeds because you will cause the original seed to become defiled, or the fruit of the vineyard that it brings forth to be defiled. Do not plow with an ox and a donkey together. Okay, so very physical example. If you've got two beasts, one of them's very strong, one of them's not as strong, don't make them plow together, because for the one that's not very strong, it's not going to be very fair being pulled along by a stronger animal. For the one that is very strong, it's not going to be fair because they're going to be hindered by the animal that's not as strong. Okay. Do not put on a garment of different kinds of wool and linen together. And a point that I want to make about this is that people think that wool and linen have got the same frequency. You will hear when people talk about this, they'll say, they've both got a frequency of 5,000. Okay, I've looked into this, it's nonsense. 5,000 what? What's vibrating? What's making the frequency? What's the source of the frequency? None of that is true. Okay? Given no units for the 5,000, 5,000 isn't a frequency. 5,000 hertz would be a frequency. 5,000 gigahertz would be a frequency. Wool and linen don't have a frequency of 5,000. That doesn't make any sense. Okay? Well, Paul shows us again how to apply these things, how to apply the principles that are behind these laws. Okay, he says, do not become unevenly yoked with unbelievers. Okay, an ox and a donkey together. What is it about an ox and a donkey that he can take a believer and an unbeliever from? Well, an ox is a clean animal, and we're going to look at being clean in flesh, in spirit, in conscience in the second part. A donkey is an unclean animal. So what Paul has done, as he does in all of his writings, he takes the Torah and he applies it to the situations. Don't become unevenly yoked with unbelievers, for what partnership has righteousness and lawlessness? Okay? What fellowship has light with darkness? And what agreement has Messiah with worthlessness? Belial. Okay, the Hebrew word Belial means worthlessness. Or what part does a believer have with an unbeliever? Okay, you shouldn't be fellowshipping with these people. You shouldn't be fellowshipping those who walk after righteousness with those who walk after lawlessness. Okay? What union has the dwelling place of Elohim with idols? For you are the dwelling place of Elohim. As Elohim has said, I shall dwell in them and walk among them. And I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. So the way that this is commonly applied is that you shouldn't marry an unbeliever. And that is absolutely sound doctrine. Okay, you shouldn't marry an unbeliever. Well, I want to look at something else that Paul says in his other letter to the Corinthians, which I think was of particular interest to a lot of people in the Torah movement. 1 Corinthians 7:10-16 says, and to the married I command, not I, but the master, A wife should not separate from her husband. Okay, so this is him saying, look, I'm saying this, but it's not me that says it. I'm getting it from the Torah. As he does all the way throughout all of his letters, he takes these things from the Torah. But if she is indeed separated, let her remain unmarried or be restored to favor with her husband, and let her husband not send away a wife. Okay, so this is all to do with separation. It's to do with being put away. It's not to do with being divorced. It's exactly what Yeshua said. If someone has put you away but not given you a bill of divorcement, and you go and you marry someone else, then you're committing adultery. However, if you've got a bill of divorcement, then you can go and marry someone else. Paul's saying exactly the same thing as Yeshua was. He's saying, let a husband not send away a wife, put away a wife. And to the rest, I say, okay, this is really important. To the rest, I say, not the master. So what Paul is about to say here is Paul's advice. People love to take all of Paul's letters and say, oh, it's just Paul's advice. It's just Paul kind of philosophizing or whatever. Not the case. Further on in the letter, he says, if anyone is a prophet or spiritual, let him recognize the things I'm writing to you are the commands of Yehovah. If it's his advice, he's going to say, and in 1 Corinthians 7, he says, I'm saying this, not the master. If any brother has an unbelieving wife and she thinks well to live with him, let him not send her away. Paul says this. Okay, this is not scripture that we have to follow. And a woman who has an unbelieving husband and he thinks well to live with her, let her not send him away. Paul thinks, not scripture. For the unbelieving husband has been set apart in the wife, and the unbelieving wife has been set apart in the husband. Otherwise your children would be unclean, but now they are set apart. So what's this saying? Is it saying that because you're married to this person, they're saved? Oh, it's saying that they have been set apart by the fact that you've been made holy for one particular reason that he mentions it. He says, otherwise your children will be unclean. Again, we're going to look at what it is for them to be unclean in the second part, where he's saying, look, you've sanctified your husband, you've set your husband apart so that when you have children with him, they're not unclean, okay, that they are set apart as well. It's not saying that the husband is saved. Again, Paul says, he's saying this, not Yehovah. If the unbelieving one separates, let him separate himself. A brother or sister has not been enslaved in such matters, but Elohim has called us to peace. For how do you know, O wife, whether you shall save your husband, or how do you know, O husband, whether you shall save your wife? Okay, so again, it's not saying that immediately they are saved. All Paul is doing is offering an opinion. Maybe you should stay with them because they might end up being saved because of you. But very important for people out there, okay? You are not under any obligation by the scriptures to stay with somebody who is an unbeliever. Okay, verse 12. Interesting one. Says, make tassels on the four corners of your garment with which you cover yourself. Okay, so there's this kind of thing in the Hebrew roots movement, the Torah movement, where people will wear 2 tzitzit. Okay, how many tzitzit does it say that you should be wearing here as a minimum? Simple, 4 tzitzit. So I've got a challenge for everyone. Everyone here would consider yourselves Yisrael. I'm sure everyone online would consider themselves Yisrael, would consider them set apart to Yehovah. Okay, what I want people to do is look down at your garments. Okay. Check out your garments. Have they got tzitzit on the 4 corners? Have they? If not, then you're in sin. And it's willful sin. You might not have known this previously, and that's fine. If you've not known it, then he will, when he weighs your heart, he'll perceive it. However, from the moment that you know it, and you know it's a command of Yehovah, then you are obliged to wear tzitzit. These things mark you as set apart to Yehovah. Set you apart from the world as his treasured possession. When he looks down upon the world, he sees us as his treasured possession with tzitzit on. So wherever people are in the world, if you've not got tzitzit on when you look down, it's a problem. Not a problem if you deal with it. It's a problem if you remain stubborn in your heart and don't deal with it. I'll deal with the fact as well that people say that only men should wear tzitzit. It kind of comes from a Jewish tradition. It comes from a misunderstanding of the Hebrew. It says in the command, say to the Bnei Yisrael, which is the sons of Israel. So they say, well, this is just for the men. The Hebrew Bnei, okay, it's a collective noun, which means it's a name for a collection of things, people in this case. And B'nai is the masculine collective noun, so it's for men. So it's translated sons. The thing is, it's also the mixed collective noun. And when you refer to a group of men and women, you use B'nai. So it can be translated sons or children. And all of the commands in Torah, every single one, not just this command, are addressed to the B'nai Yisrael. So if you were to take that argument and you were to apply it to all of the Torah, what you'd be saying is that all of the Torah only applies to men. It's wrong on several counts. Most wrong because it's actually not the word for just men, it's the word for men and women. Verse 13 says, when any man takes a wife and has gone into her and has hated her and has made abusive charges against her and brought an evil name on her and said, I took this woman, and when I came to her, I did not find her a virgin. Then the father and mother of the young woman have taken and brought out proof of the girl's virginity to the elders of the city at the gate, whatever that proof is. Okay, perhaps the bloody sheet. And the girl's father has said to the elders, I gave my daughter to this man as a wife, and he hates her. And see, he has made abusive charges against her, saying, I did not find your daughter a virgin. And yet these are the proofs of my daughter's virginity, and they have spread the garment before the elders of the city. People misunderstand this. They think what's actually happening here is the man has brought the case to the elders of the city. He said, this girl is not a virgin. The elders have said, okay, we're either going to need proof of her virginity or we're going to stone her to death. Not what this is saying. Okay. This is all about the man who has made abusive charges. When any man takes a wife and he makes abusive charges against her, then the father and mother have taken proof of the girl's virginity to the elders, and they've said, we've got a case against this man. He said that she wasn't a virgin and therefore he wasn't going to marry her, but we've got proof that she is a virgin. Okay, and if they do that, the elders of the city have taken that man and punished him, and fined him 100 pieces of silver and given them to the father of the young woman, because he has brought an evil name on a virgin of Israel, and she is to be his wife. He is not allowed to put her away all his days. So he can't just go, oh, okay, I'll take her as my wife, and now I've put her away. Okay, he's fined and he's punished. This is the man. Okay, I want you to take note of his punishment here. Okay, he's fined 100 pieces of silver and he's given them to the father. Okay, his punishment's not death, and that's going to be very relevant in a second. It says, but if the matter is true that the girl was not found a virgin, then they brought out the girl to the door of her father's house, and the men of the city have stoned her to death with stones because she has done wickedness in Israel to whore in her father's house. Thus you have purged the evil from your midst. So this is where people get confused. They're like, well, it's either one or the other, isn't it? Okay, if it's true, and if they can provide proof, then he's fined, and if they can't provide proof, then she's stoned. It's not what it says. It says, if it's true. A law that's very pertinent here is Deuteronomy 19:15-19, which we looked at last week. One witness does not rise up against a man concerning any iniquity or any sin that he commits. First relevant point. At the mouth of 2 witnesses or at the mouth of 3 witnesses a matter is established. Here, though, when a malicious witness rises up, what was this about? It was about the guy bringing abusive charges against the woman, saying that she wasn't a virgin. He was a malicious witness. Rises up against any man to accuse him of turning aside. Then both men who have the dispute shall stand before Yehovah, before the priests and the judges who served in those days. And the judges shall diligently search and see if the witness is a false witness who has falsely accused his brother. And then you shall do to him as he thought to have done to his brother. What was this guy's punishment? It was to be fined. It wasn't to be stoned. So we know that the witness that he brought was not sufficient to cause this girl to die. Because if it was, his punishment would have been death. Okay? So that's one point. The other point, of course, is that at the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses is he that is to die put to death. So this guy coming and saying this girl wasn't a virgin, it's not sufficient to put her to death. Okay, what you would need is 2 or 3 witnesses that she wasn't a virgin, something that you're probably very unlikely to get, because you're not going to get people going, oh, I've slept with that girl, because if they came out and said that, then they would be liable to the death penalty too. The hand of the witnesses are first against him to put him to death, and the hand of all the people last, so you have purged the evil from your midst. So we can take this and we can look at what Yehovah sees as good and what he sees as evil, and how bad he sees it for a girl to do this in her father's house, to go and sleep with other people, represent herself as a virgin, become this man's wife and not tell anyone. It's not a good thing. But this is absolutely not saying that if the girl's parents can't provide proof of her virginity, then she's put to death on the say of the man. That's not what it's saying at all. Verse 22 says, when a man is found lying with a woman married to a husband, then both of them have died, both the man that lay with the woman and the woman. Thus you have purged the evil from Israel. So if you find somebody and they're in adultery, both of the people are to die. Okay, the man because he slept with a married woman, and the woman, she slept with someone else when she was married. Okay, Yehovah says this is a sin worthy of death. Verse 23 says, when a girl who is a virgin is engaged to a husband, and a man finds her in the city and lies with her, then you have brought them out to the gate of that city and have stoned them to death with stones, the girl because she did not cry out in the city, and the man because he's humbled his neighbor's wife. Very interesting phrasing there. The girl's engaged to her husband, yet she's called his wife here. This is how Yehovah sees it. If you're engaged to somebody, you are their wife. Thus you have purged the evil from your midst. But if a man finds the girl who is engaged in the field, and the man seizes her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her is died. So what is the difference? Okay, in the field and in the city. If they're in the city, they're both put to death. If it's in the field, only the man's put to death. Well, it says that she didn't cry out in the city. If it's in a city, dense population in a city, and you find them sleeping with each other, and the girl says, oh, I was being raped, then no, that's not enough to save her from the death penalty. She didn't cry out, she wasn't protesting. There were people around who could have done something. Both of them are put to death in that case. She's complicit in the action. But you have done no matter to the girl has no sin worthy of death. For the matter is like a man who rises against his neighbor and has killed him. For he found her in the field and she has cried out, the engaged girl, but without anyone to save her. So if you find her in the field, she's not put to death. From this we can see a greater principle as well. Okay? Give people the benefit of the doubt. If there's no evidence against them, give them the benefit of the doubt. The girl lying with them in the field could have been just like the girl lying in the city. Okay, she could have been complicit in it, but because of the circumstances, she's given the benefit of the doubt. When a man finds a girl who is a virgin, who is not engaged, and he takes hold of her and lies with her, and they are found out, then the man who lay with her has given to the girl's father 50 pieces of silver, and she is to be his wife because he has humbled her, and he's not allowed to put her away all his days. So what's going on here? Okay, you sleep with somebody outside of marriage. You found out. What you have to do? You pay 50 pieces of silver, which is the bride price, to the girl's father, and then you're not allowed to put that girl away. You've got to marry her, but you can't just marry her and go, okay, I'll marry her, and now I've divorced her. Okay, you can't get away with that. If you have sex outside of marriage, you are to become married, and then you are not to become divorced. This is a repeat of this law that we see. Okay, again, Deuteronomy, Deuteros Nomos, second law, the second time that the law is given. Okay, sometimes you get more detail and sometimes you get less, but this is the other time that the law was given. It says, and when a man entices a virgin who is not engaged and lies with her, he does certainly pay the bride price for her to be his wife. So it doesn't say here that it's 50 pieces of silver. We get that information in Deuteronomy. If her father absolutely refuses to give her to him, he pays according to the bride price of virgins. Okay, so if the father, who is then becomes involved at this point and can say whether or not you can marry this person, okay, you've slept with her outside of marriage while she was in my house, I'll give you my permission, I won't give you my permission, but even if he doesn't give permission, the guy doesn't get away with it. He's got to pay the bride price of a virgin. Verse 30 says, a man does not take his father's wife, nor uncover his father's skirt. And you might think that's just absurd. Nobody would do that anyway. Okay, as an example from the Gentiles, I hear this woman, headline, I'm in love with my son and want to have his baby. Okay, that happens among the Gentiles. It is within human nature, apparently. But a point about this, a man does not marry his father's wife. Why is this law given? The law is given because of transgressions. This happened somewhere in the Torah. Okay, Reuben slept with Yaakov's wife. He didn't sleep with his mother, though. He slept with Bilhah. His mother was Leah. So, not sleeping with your father's wife, back in these days, might not have involved sleeping with your mum. Might have involved sleeping with one of his other wives. No one wounded or crushed or whose member is cut off. And we're going to look at these things about entering into the assembly of Yehovah, and then we'll come to an end for this part. But anyone who's wounded, crushed, or whose member is cut off, okay, they've got something happen to their bits, does enter the assembly of Yehovah, okay? The assembly of Yehovah is not Israel. Okay, anyone is welcome to enter into Israel. Anyone's welcome to enter into his people. The assembly of Yehovah, though, was different. The assembly of Yehovah was the leadership. Okay, makes this very interesting. What happens to somebody if they have their testicles removed, for example? What happens to their characteristics? They are no longer masculine. Okay, and we've looked before at the idea of men and women in leadership roles. If a man is emasculated, he cannot become a leader in Israel. No one of illegitimate birth does enter the assembly of Yehovah. Even a 10th generation of his does not enter the assembly of Yehovah. Okay, someone who's born of fornication, somebody who's this, that, and the other, all the sexual sin that we see throughout the Torah, they're not suitable to be leaders in Israel. An Ammonite or a Moabite does not enter the assembly of Yehovah. Even a 10th generation of them does not ever enter the assembly of Yehovah. And if from this we can actually see that it's not talking about just somebody who is an Ammonite or a Moabite. It's talking about somebody who has become an Israelite who is of this lineage. How do we know that from this? Okay, if it was just talking about an Ammonite or a Moabite who lived in that land, how would you know who his offspring were and how many generations? And what person would you start counting the generations from? This is talking about counting the generations from when somebody has come to dwell in Israel and become an Israelite. His offspring from that point then is counted. Otherwise, you know, that Ammonite could say, I am the 500th generation of this Ammonite, and therefore I can enter the assembly of Yehovah. Not what it's talking about. This is talking about people who are a part of Israel. Because they did not meet you with bread and water on the way when you came out of Mitzrayim, and because they hired against you Balaam, son of Beor, from Pethor of Aram Naharaim, to curse you. So they've got these characteristics. This is this Ammonite who's just arrived, and he said, I would like to become a member of Yisrael. Okay, Yehovah tells us the attitude that we're to have to the Ammonites and the Moabites in a minute. But because they'd done this, because they tried to sneakily curse Israel by leading them astray into sexual sin, they cannot be part of leadership. But Yehovah your Elohim has refused to listen to Balaam, and Yehovah your Elohim does turn for you the curse into a blessing for you, because Yehovah your Elohim loves you. Do not seek their peace nor their good all your days forever. The Ammonites, the Moabites, not to seek their peace or their good because they did these things. We'll see later as well that they're told when they come into the land and they're given rest from their enemies, that there are a certain group of people who they are to destroy. Whenever they come across them, they're to destroy them. Well, Isaiah 56, 4-7 shows us that this isn't talking about them becoming members of Israel. This is only talking about them becoming members of the assembly of Yehovah. It says, for thus said Yehovah to the eunuchs who cherish my Sabbaths and have chosen what pleases me and hold fast to my covenant. To them I have given in my house and within my walls a place and a name better than that of sons and daughters. I give them an everlasting name that is not cut off. Okay, so this is somebody who is wounded or crushed or has bits removed. Okay, absolutely they're allowed to repent and come into Israel. Same with the Ammonites and the Moabites, who are the foreigners. Also the sons of the foreigner who join themselves to Yehovah to serve him and to love the name of Yehovah, to be his servants, all who cherish the Sabbath and not profane it and hold fast to my covenant. Them I have brought to my set-apart mountain, and let them rejoice in the house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices are accepted on my altar, for my house is called a house of prayer for all peoples. So all the people are welcome to come, repent and be a part of Israel. They're just not allowed to become a part of the leadership of Israel for whatever reason. Verse 7 says, do not loathe an Edomite, for he is your brother. Do not loathe a Mitzrayite, because you are a stranger in this land. The children of the third generation born to them do enter the assembly of Yehovah. So he's got a different standard here. Okay, somebody repents, they come and they become part of the children of Israel. They become part of Israel, grafted in. From that person, the third generation born to them can enter in and become a part of the assembly of Yehovah. So I hope that's cleared up some misunderstandings in the Torah. We'll take a break there and we'll come back and look at clean, unclean, what it is to be defiled before Yehovah.